I'm Felicia, 32 years old, a single mom working in marketing. My daughter Amy is 8 and came down with a severe fever last weekend when I had a crucial promotion meeting scheduled. I called my parents begging them to watch her, but they refused because they weren't willing to sacrifice their weekend. I had to miss the meeting that could have changed our financial situation. When I finally stood up for myself and stopped helping them, they started demanding money from me. I moved away and cut contact. Now they're crying on the phone daily. Before I share my story of family betrayal, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever been taken advantage of by family members who should have been there for you. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, I always felt like an afterthought in my parents' lives. My father, Harold, and mother, Susan, both worked as executives at different companies, and their careers always took precedence over family time. I spent most of my childhood either alone or with a rotation of babysitters while my parents attended business meetings, networking events, or social gatherings with their friends. As a little girl, I would wait by the window each evening, hoping to see their car pull into the driveway before my bedtime. Most nights, I would fall asleep, waiting only to be carried to bed by whichever babysitter was on duty that evening. Weekends weren't much different. Dad would spend Saturdays on the golf course, and Mom would meet her friends for shopping trips or lunch dates. I tried everything to get their attention. I became a straight A student, joined every club I could, and even took up playing the piano because my mother once mentioned she had wanted to learn as a child. Nothing seemed to work. They would attend my recitals or school events, but always with one eye on their watches or phones, clearly thinking about what else they could be doing. The few times they did show up fully present for me were during parent-teacher conferences, where they would beam with pride as my teachers praised my academic achievements. Those rare moments of approval became what I lived for, and I pushed myself harder and harder to earn their attention. By high school, I had accepted that this was just how my family worked. I threw myself into extracurriculars and academics, building a resume that would get me into a good college and far away from home. When I was accepted to the University of Washington with a partial scholarship, it felt like freedom was finally within reach. The strange thing was, once I moved away to college, my relationship with my parents actually improved. The physical distance somehow made it easier for us to connect. They would call weekly to check in, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations. When they visited campus, they seemed more relaxed, more interested in my life. For the first time, I felt like they saw me as a person, not just a responsibility. During my junior year, I met Thomas at a campus coffee shop. He was studying finance and had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. Unlike my parents, Thomas listened when I talked. He remembered the small details about my day, my preferences, my dreams. We dated for 2 years before getting married right after graduation. Thomas was offered a position at a financial firm in Denver, so we moved back to my hometown. My parents seemed genuinely happy to have me nearby again, and they welcomed Thomas into the family warmly. When I told them I was pregnant at 24, they even offered to help with childcare once the baby arrived. Amy was born on a snowy January morning, and for a while, everything was perfect. Thomas was an amazing father, getting up for midnight feedings and singing silly songs to make our daughter laugh. My parents would visit on weekends, bringing presents for Amy and actually spending time with us instead of rushing off to their next engagement. But 3 years into our marriage, tragedy struck. Thomas was driving home from work during a thunderstorm when a truck lost control on the wet highway and crashed into his car. He died instantly. The police officer who came to deliver the news said he wouldn't have felt any pain, as if that somehow made it better. I was 27 years old, suddenly a widow and a single mother to a 3-year-old who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. The grief was overwhelming, like drowning on dry land. Every breath hurt. Every moment without Thomas felt impossible. To their credit, my parents stepped up in those first few months after the funeral. Mom would come over to watch Amy while I dealt with insurance paperwork and funeral arrangements. Dad helped me understand the financial situation Thomas had left behind. There was some life insurance money, but not enough to last more than a couple of years if I didn't work. I took a job at a marketing firm, starting at an entry-level position, despite my degree, because it offered flexible hours that worked with my new reality as a single parent. My parents continued to help with Amy on occasion, but as the months passed, they gradually returned to their old patterns. The dinner invitations became less frequent. The offers to watch Amy so I could have a break disappeared. When I would ask for help, there was always an excuse. A business dinner, a golf tournament, a spa weekend with friends. Slowly, I realized that while they had stepped up during the immediate crisis, they weren't interested in the long-term commitment of helping their daughter raise a child alone. Still, I maintained the relationship, inviting them for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations. I told myself it was for Amy's sake. She deserved to know her grandparents, even if they weren't the most reliable people in the world. But deep down, I think part of me was still that little girl waiting by the window, hoping for their approval and love. The years following Thomas's death were a blur of exhaustion and determination. Every day felt like running a marathon with no finish line in sight. My alarm would go off at 5:30 in the morning, giving me time to shower and prepare lunches before waking Amy at 6. We would rush through breakfast, teeth brushing, and getting dressed before hurrying out the door by 7:15 to drop her at before school care. I would then battle morning traffic to reach the office by 8:30, where I would work frantically until 5, often skipping lunch, to make sure all my projects were completed on time. Then it was back in the car to pick Amy up from after school. Care by 6, rush home to make dinner, help with homework, supervise bath time, read a bedtime story, and tuck her in by 8:30. Only then could I collapse on the couch, usually with my laptop to catch up on work emails or household bills. Most nights, I fell asleep right there, too exhausted to even make it to my bed. The financial strain was constant. Thomas's life insurance had covered the funeral expenses and paid off our car, but it wasn't enough to pay off the mortgage on our small condo or support us long-term. My entry-level salary at the marketing firm barely covered our monthly expenses, leaving nothing for savings or emergencies. Every unexpected cost threw our budget into chaos. When Amy outgrew her winter coat, I had to put groceries on a credit card that month. When the refrigerator broke down, I had to borrow money from a coworker to replace it. But despite the hardships, Amy and I grew incredibly close. She became my little partner, helping sort laundry and set the table from the time she was 4. By 7, she was making her own lunch with my supervision and reading me stories at night instead of the other way around. She rarely complained about our circumstances, even when her friends went on fancy vacations or got expensive toys that we couldn't afford. Once, when she overheard me crying over bills after I thought she was asleep, she came and patted my hand, saying, "It's okay, Mommy. We don't need stuff to be happy. We have each other." In those moments, I felt both heartbroken that my child had to be so mature, so young, and incredibly proud of the person she was becoming. Amy had Thomas's kind eyes and empathetic heart. She was the center of my world, and everything I did was to give her the best life I could. By the time Amy turned 8, I had worked my way up to a mid-level position at the marketing firm. The pay was better, but still just enough to keep us afloat. We had moved to a slightly larger apartment, and I was able to enroll Amy in a few after-school activities like swim lessons and art class. But we were still living paycheck to paycheck, with no real safety net. Then came the opportunity I had been working toward for years. Janet, our marketing director, announced she was relocating to the company's London office, creating an opening for her position. The role would come with a 40% salary increase, better benefits, and more flexible working hours. It would change everything for Amy and me. I went home that night and told Amy about the possibility while we ate spaghetti at our small kitchen table. "Does this mean we could get a dog?" she asked, her eyes lighting up with hope. I laughed. Maybe, sweetie, it would mean we could move to a place with a yard. And you could take those dance classes you've been wanting to try. And maybe we could even save for a trip to Disney World in a couple of years. Really? Her face was so full of excitement that it made my heart ache. I wanted to give her the world, and this promotion might finally give me the means to provide more than just the basics. The next day at work, I approached my direct supervisor, Mark, to express my interest in the position. He smiled and nodded encouragingly. I think you'd be great for the role, Felicia. You've shown incredible dedication, and your campaign ideas have consistently outperformed expectations. I'll put in a good word with the higher-ups. I was floating on air for the rest of the day. For once, things seemed to be looking up. On my lunch break, I called my friend Jessica from the legal department to share the good news. That's amazing, Fel. You totally deserve this, she said, but then her voice dropped to a more serious tone. Just be aware that Ryan from the digital team is also gunning for the position, and you know he plays golf with the CEO every month. My stomach sank a little. Ryan was good at his job, but he was even better at office politics. He was single with no children and could work late hours and attend weekend events without any personal complications. Plus, he had the advantage of being part of the boys' club with upper management. The final interviews are happening on Sunday, Jessica continued. The big bosses are flying in from New York just for this. Make sure you're prepared to knock their socks off. I thanked her for the information and spent the rest of the week preparing for the interview. I created a comprehensive presentation outlining my vision for the department, complete with market research and revenue projections. I rehearsed answers to potential questions while cooking dinner and ironed my best suit after Amy went to bed. Everything was falling into place. I arranged for Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, to watch Amy during the Sunday meeting. She was always happy to have Amy over to bake cookies and watch old movies. This was going to work. This had to work. Our future depended on it. 2 days before the big meeting, Amy came home from school looking flushed. When I touched her forehead, it was burning hot. I don't feel good, Mommy, she whispered, her usually energetic voice weak and raspy. I gave her some children's acetaminophen and tucked her into bed early, hoping it was just a 24-hour bug that would pass quickly. But by morning, her fever had risen to 102 degrees, and she had developed a nasty cough that seemed to rattle in her chest. I called in to work and took her to our pediatrician, Dr. Gonzalez, who listened to her lungs with a concerned expression. It sounds like pneumonia, he said after completing the examination. We'll need to start her on antibiotics right away. She needs to stay in bed, drink plenty of fluids, and be monitored closely for the next few days. The fever should start to come down within 24 to 48 hours once the antibiotics kick in, but the cough might linger for a week or more. My heart sank as I realized what this meant for the Sunday meeting, but I pushed that thought aside to focus on Amy. I filled her prescription and took her home, setting up a makeshift sick room in the living room so she could watch TV while resting. As the day wore on, Amy's condition seemed to worsen. Her fever fluctuated, sometimes dropping after medication only to spike again a few hours later. Her cough became more frequent, keeping her from sleeping comfortably. I stayed by her side, applying cool compresses to her forehead and making sure she took small sips of water and electrolyte drinks. By Friday evening, I knew I had to figure out a solution for the Sunday meeting. Mrs. Patterson was in her 80s and couldn't be expected to care for a sick child. I called every friend I could think of, but everyone had weekend plans they couldn't change. My coworker Diane had a family wedding. My friend Samantha was out of town. Even my backup babysitter, a college student named Jasmine, was away at a mandatory school retreat. With growing desperation, I realized there was only one option left. I hadn't asked my parents for a significant favor in years, knowing they would likely refuse, but this was an emergency. This was about Amy's future as much as mine. I dialed their number at 7:30 Friday evening, knowing they would be home from work, but not yet out for their usual Friday dinner with friends. My father answered on the third ring. "Hello." "Dad, it's Felicia. I need your help." I explained the situation quickly but thoroughly. Amy was sick with pneumonia. I had a crucial meeting on Sunday that could lead to a promotion. I had tried everyone else. Could they please come over and stay with Amy for a few hours on Sunday morning? There was a pause, and I heard him cover the phone and speak to my mother. Then he came back on the line. "We have plans on Sunday, Felicia. We're playing in the country club tournament, followed by the winner's brunch." "Dad, this is important. This promotion would mean an extra $20,000 a year for us. I could finally start saving for Amy's college fund. Please, it's just for a few hours." Another muffled conversation, then my mother came on the line. "Felicia, we committed to this tournament weeks ago. The club expects us to be there. Can't you reschedule your meeting?" "No, Mom, I can't. The executives are flying in from New York specifically for these interviews. If I miss it, they'll give the position to someone else." I could hear the desperation in my own voice and hated it. "Well, I don't know what to tell you. You should have planned better. Maybe you should have a backup babysitter for situations like this." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I've tried everyone, Mom. Amy is really sick. She needs someone to watch her, make sure she takes her medicine on time, and monitor her fever. You're her grandparents. Can't you help us, just this once?" "Look, Felicia." My mother's voice had that dismissive tone I remembered from childhood. "We simply can't sacrifice our weekend for this. We have commitments. We have a life too, you know. A life too important to help your sick granddaughter." I asked, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "Don't be dramatic. She has a fever, not a life-threatening condition. You're her mother. This is your responsibility. We can't just drop everything because you don't have your life organized properly." Those words hit me like a physical blow. After all the years of putting my own needs last, of working myself to exhaustion to provide for Amy, to be told I didn't have my life organized properly was more than I could bear. "I see," I said quietly. "Thanks for nothing." I hung up before she could respond and sat in stunned silence, staring at the wall, while tears of frustration welled in my eyes. From the living room, I could hear Amy coughing, a painful wheezing sound that broke my heart. With shaking hands, I composed an email to Mark and the HR director explaining my situation. I attached my presentation with detailed notes and asked if there was any possibility of rescheduling my interview or participating virtually. I hit send, but the knot in my stomach told me it was futile. That night, as Amy's fever spiked again, and I sat beside her bed, applying cool compresses to her forehead, I made a silent promise to her. Somehow, some way, I would build us a better life. A life where we weren't constantly one emergency away from disaster. A life where the people who were supposed to love us actually showed up when we needed them. Sunday morning arrived with gray skies and rain matching my mood perfectly. Amy's fever had finally broken around dawn, but she was still weak and coughing frequently. I made her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, which she only picked at despite my encouragement. I checked my email for the 10th time since waking up. No response from Mark or HR. I had sent a follow-up email the previous evening, even suggesting I could bring Amy with me and have her wait in the lobby if absolutely necessary, but there had been no reply. At 10 o'clock, when the meeting would be starting, I sat on our worn couch with Amy's head in my lap, stroking her hair while she dozed fitfully. My phone remained silent, my best suit stayed hanging in the closet, and my carefully prepared presentation remained undelivered. At 11:30, my phone finally rang. It was Jessica. "Hey, how's Amy doing?" she asked, her voice gentle. "A little better. Her fever broke this morning, but she's still pretty miserable. Any news from the meeting?" Jessica sighed. I thought you might want to hear it from a friend first. They gave the position to Ryan. Even though I had expected it, the confirmation felt like a punch to the gut. Right. Of course they did. I'm so sorry, Fel. For what it's worth, Mark tried to argue for postponing your interview, but the New York executives had a flight to catch this afternoon and said they needed to make a decision today. I thanked Jessica for letting me know and ended the call, feeling numb. Everything I had worked for, all the late nights and sacrifices gone because my parents couldn't be bothered to help for a few hours. An hour later, Mark himself called. He sounded genuinely regretful. Felicia, I just wanted to check in on you and your daughter. How is she doing? She's improving, thank you for asking. I'm really sorry about how things turned out with the promotion. Your work has been excellent and under different circumstances. I understand. I interrupted, not wanting to hear platitudes. The company needs someone who can put work first. Well, yes. Mark sounded uncomfortable. Availability is a factor in leadership positions, but I want you to know you're still valued here, and there will be other opportunities. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Opportunities like this one didn't come along often, and now I would have to wait who knows how long for another chance, all while Ryan settled into the role I had worked so hard to earn. After hanging up, I allowed myself 5 minutes to cry silently in the bathroom with the shower running to mask any sounds from Amy. Then I washed my face, put on a brave smile, and went back to being mom. The rest of the day passed in a haze of Disney movies, medicine schedules, and soup making. Amy's appetite began to return, which I took as a good sign. By evening, she was sitting up and coloring, though still pausing frequently to cough. At 7 o'clock, my phone rang again. It was my parents. For a moment, I considered not answering, but some lingering sense of obligation made me pick up. Hello. Felicia, it's Dad. How did your meeting go today? The casual way he asked, as if he hadn't played a major role in my missing it, made my blood boil. But I kept my voice steady. I didn't go. Amy was too sick to be left alone, and I couldn't find anyone to stay with her. Oh, that's too bad, he said, sounding only mildly interested. Well, there will be other opportunities, I'm sure. How was your golf tournament? I asked, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from my voice. We came in second, just 2 strokes behind the Andersons, but the brunch afterward was excellent. They had that smoked salmon your mother loves. Something inside me snapped. Years of disappointment, of making excuses for them, of lowering my expectations until they were practically on the ground, all came rushing to the surface. I'm so glad you enjoyed your salmon while your granddaughter was sick with pneumonia, and I lost a promotion that would have changed our lives. Now, Felicia. My father's tone turned stern, like I was a child being reprimanded. Don't be dramatic, and don't try to make us feel guilty for living our lives. We're not responsible for your situation. My situation? I repeated incredulously. Yes, your situation. You chose to be a single mother. I didn't choose for Thomas to die. Well, no, but you chose to have a child young before your career was established, and now you're dealing with the consequences of that choice. Don't blame us for your failures. I was speechless. Tears of rage and hurt filled my eyes. Felicia, are you there? My father asked. Yes, I managed to say. I'm here, and I finally see you clearly for the first time in my life. I ended the call and sat in stunned silence. My own father had just told me that my failure was my own fault for becoming a mother, as if Amy was a mistake rather than the greatest blessing of my life, as if losing my husband was somehow a poor life choice rather than a devastating tragedy. In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The little girl who had waited by the window for her parents to come home was finally growing up, and she was done waiting for love from people who were incapable of giving it. The following morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Amy was well enough to return to school, her fever gone, though the cough lingered. As I packed her lunch and helped her get dressed, I made a decision that was long overdue. For years, I had been the dutiful daughter, dropping everything whenever my parents needed help. I drove them to doctor appointments when my father's arthritis made driving difficult. I went over to their house to fix their computer whenever they had technical issues. I helped my mother with gardening in the spring because she complained about her back. I even did their taxes every year because my father said accountants were too expensive. All this while working full-time and raising a child on my own. And when I needed them most, they couldn't be bothered to help me for a single day. Well, no more. I was done being their free labor while receiving nothing in return. Not even basic consideration. That evening, after putting Amy to bed, I called them and clearly stated my new boundaries. I won't be able to help you with errands or household tasks anymore, I said firmly. My priority has to be Amy and supporting our household. There was a shocked silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? My mother finally asked. You're just not going to help us anymore, after all we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? When have you ever put my needs or Amy's before your own convenience? That's not fair. We helped you after Thomas died. For a few weeks, yes, and I appreciated that. But for the past 5 years, the help has been entirely one-sided. I've been there whenever you needed me, but when I needed you during a genuine emergency, you chose a golf tournament. You can't just cut us off because of one incident, my father interjected. We're family. This isn't about one incident. This is about a lifetime of me never being important enough. And now Amy isn't important enough either. So yes, I am setting boundaries. I'll still bring Amy for visits, but I won't be your unpaid assistant anymore. They didn't believe me, of course. My mother laughed it off, saying I was being emotional and would get over it. My father said I was being childish and would regret my attitude when I calmed down. 2 weeks later, my father called on a Tuesday morning while I was getting ready for work. Felicia, I need you to take me to my doctor appointment this afternoon. My arthritis is acting up, and your mother has her book club. I'm sorry, Dad, but I can't. I have a presentation at work, and then I need to pick Amy up from school. She still has that cough, and I don't want to leave her with a sitter when she's not feeling well. This is important, Felicia. It's my arthritis medication review. I understand, but my job and my daughter are important too. You could call a taxi or use one of those rideshare apps I installed on your phone. That's ridiculous. Why should I pay for a ride when you can drive me? This is what family does. No, Dad. This is what you expect from me, but never reciprocate. I'm sorry, but I have to go now or I'll be late for work. I hung up feeling both guilty and liberated. The guilt was an old, familiar companion instilled by years of emotional manipulation. The liberation was new and fragile, but growing stronger. That evening, my mother called, her voice tight with anger. I can't believe you refused to take your father to the doctor. He had to pay $30 for a car service. Is this how we raised you to behave? To be so selfish and ungrateful? Ungrateful for what exactly? I asked calmly. For everything. For raising you, for helping you after Thomas died, for being there for you. But that's just it, Mom. You haven't been there for me. Not when it really mattered. Well, if you're going to be like this, perhaps you should start paying us back for all the help we've given you over the years. I was so shocked, I almost laughed. Pay you back for what? For the money we lent you after Thomas died. For all the times we've watched Amy. For everything we've done. You never lent me money after Thomas died. You helped me sort out his life insurance, but you never gave me a dime. And you've watched Amy maybe 10 times in 5 years, usually just for an hour or two while I ran errands for you. That's not how we remember it, my mother sniffed. We've sacrificed a lot for you, Felicia, and now you're treating us like we're nothing to you. After that conversation, things escalated quickly. My parents began telling family members and their friends that I was refusing to help them in their old age despite all they had done for me. My aunt called to lecture me about respecting my elders. My mother's friend ran into me at the grocery store and made a pointed comment about ungrateful children. Then the texts started. First from my father, "We need $2,000 to fix the roof. Since you won't help us with labor anymore, you can contribute financially." Then from my mother, "Your father's medication costs have gone up. We expect you to cover the difference. It's $400 a month." I was baffled by their sudden financial demands until Jessica, who had become a close friend, suggested I check my credit report. What I discovered left me stunned. There were 2 credit cards and a personal loan in my name that I had never applied for, all opened shortly after I had moved back to Denver following college. The loan was fully paid off, but the credit cards had significant balances. "This is identity theft," Jessica said bluntly when I showed her the report. "Even if they're your parents, it's illegal." But how I never gave them permission to open accounts in my name. "Did you live with them for any period after college before you married Thomas?" I nodded. "For about 6 months, while I was job hunting and saving for my own place." "They probably had access to your personal documents then. Birth certificate, social security card, that sort of thing." The betrayal cut deep. Not only had they refused to help me when I needed them most, but they had actually stolen from me, using my identity to get credit they apparently couldn't qualify for on their own. The stress began to take a physical toll. I started having trouble sleeping, lying awake, worrying about the financial and emotional mess my parents had created. I would find myself zoning out during meetings at work, my mind 1,000 miles away. My appetite diminished, and I lost weight that I couldn't afford to lose. Amy noticed the change in me. One night, as I tucked her in, she placed her small hand on my cheek. "Mommy, why are you sad all the time now?" Her question broke my heart. Children shouldn't have to worry about their parents' emotional state. I forced a smile. "I'm not sad, sweetie. Just a little tired. Grown-up stuff." She looked at me with those wise eyes that seemed too old for her 8-year-old face. "Is it because of Grandma and Grandpa? They haven't called for our Sunday phone time in a long time." I hesitated, not wanting to burden her with adult problems, but also not wanting to lie. "Grandma and Grandpa and I are having some disagreements right now, but it's nothing for you to worry about." "Are they being mean to you?" she asked directly, out of the mouths of babes. "They're not being very nice right now, no. But sometimes grown-ups disagree, and they need some time apart to figure things out." She nodded seriously. "Like when Lily and I had a fight about the swing at recess, and we didn't talk for 2 days, but then we decided being friends was more important than who got the swing first." I smiled, a genuine one this time. "Something like that, except grown-up problems are a bit more complicated." "I hope you figure it out," she said, yawning. "But if they're being mean, you don't have to talk to them. That's what you tell me about the kids at school who aren't nice." From the wisdom of children. As I kissed her goodnight, I realized she was right. I had been teaching Amy to stand up for herself, to not let others treat her poorly while I continued to accept mistreatment from my own parents. It was time for a more drastic change. Over the next few weeks, I began researching job opportunities outside of Denver. If I was going to make a clean break from my parents' toxic influence, a physical move would help establish that boundary. I updated my resume and portfolio, focusing on the successful campaigns I had led over the past few years. Despite missing out on the promotion, my work record was solid, with consistently positive performance reviews and measurable results. One evening, while browsing job listings, I came across a senior marketing manager position at a growing tech company in Portland, Oregon. The role sounded perfect. It offered a significant salary increase, a collaborative company culture, and most importantly, they emphasized work-life balance in their company values. I submitted my application that night, not really expecting anything to come of it. To my surprise, I received an email the very next day, requesting a video interview. The initial conversation with their HR manager went well, followed by a more technical interview with the marketing director. They seemed impressed by my experience and my ideas for their upcoming product launch. A week later, they invited me for a final interview, graciously offering to conduct it via video conference when I explained my situation as a single parent. The interview lasted nearly 2 hours, during which I presented a sample marketing strategy I had developed specifically for their flagship product. 3 days later, I received the call I had been hoping for. They were offering me the position with a salary 30% higher than what I was currently making, plus benefits that included flexible working hours and the ability to work from home 2 days a week. I accepted on the spot. That evening, I sat Amy down at the kitchen table to share the news. "Sweetie, I've got something important to tell you. I've been offered a new job in Portland, Oregon." Her eyes widened. "Is that far away?" "Yes, it's about 1,000 miles from here. We would need to move." Her lower lip trembled slightly. "But what about my school and Lily and Ms. Johnson?" Ms. Johnson was her beloved art teacher. I took her hands in mine. "I know it's scary to think about moving to a new place. You'd have to start at a new school and make new friends. But there are some really good things about this move, too. The new job would pay more money, so we could get a bigger apartment, maybe even one with a small yard. And I'd have more time to spend with you because I could work from home sometimes." She considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Would I still get to do art class?" "Absolutely. Portland has lots of great art programs. We could find one you love." "And could we get a cat? You always said we couldn't have pets in this apartment." I laughed. "Yes, we could probably get a cat in our new place." Her face brightened. "Okay then, I think I want to move." Just like that, with the simple logic of a child, the decision was made. Over the next few weeks, I began the process of organizing our move. I gave notice at work, started packing non-essential items, and researched neighborhoods and schools in Portland. I decided not to tell my parents about the move immediately. Given their recent behavior, I worried they might try to interfere or even take legal action to prevent us from leaving using grandparents' rights as an excuse. While I knew such a case would be weak given their minimal involvement in Amy's life, I didn't want to risk the stress and expense of a legal battle. Unfortunately, Denver was a small enough city that news traveled fast. 3 weeks before our planned departure, I received a call from my mother. "Sarah Wilson saw you at the grocery store, and you told her you're moving to Portland. Were you planning to tell us at all?" Her voice was cold with fury. I sighed. "Yes, Mom. I was going to tell you before we left." "This is ridiculous, Felicia. You can't just take our granddaughter and move across the country." "Actually, I can. I've accepted a position with a company in Portland. It's a great opportunity for us." "You're doing this to punish us, aren't you? Because we couldn't babysit one time?" "No, Mom. I'm doing this because it's what's best for Amy and me. The job offers better pay, better benefits, and a better work-life balance. We'll fight this, you know. We have rights as grandparents." The threat sent a chill through me, but I kept my voice steady. "You barely see Amy as it is. The courts typically only grant grandparent visitation when there's been a consistent relationship which you haven't maintained." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Is that what your lawyer friend told you?" "Well, we'll see about that." Before I could respond, she hung up. The next day, while I was at work, my parents showed up at my apartment. Thankfully, Amy was at school and they couldn't get past the building's security door. But they left a note demanding I call them immediately to work this out before it goes too far. That evening, after ensuring Amy was occupied with her homework in her bedroom, I called them, bracing myself for the confrontation. "You can't do this, Felicia," my father began without preamble. "You can't take Amy away from her family, her school, everything she knows." "I'm her family," I replied firmly. "And children adapt. She's excited about the move, especially the possibility of finally having a pet." "This is selfish," my mother cut in. "You're only thinking about yourself." "No, I'm thinking about Amy's future and mine. This job is a significant step up. It means financial security for us. We could help you financially if that's the issue." My father offered, his tone suddenly conciliatory. I almost laughed. "After you tried to extort money from me, after you committed identity theft using my name, I don't think so." "That's a serious accusation." My father's voice turned cold. "Be careful what you say." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I have the credit reports to prove it." "Those cards were for family expenses," my mother interjected. "For things we needed when we were helping you after Thomas died." "They were opened before Thomas died when I was still in college," I countered. "And regardless, you never had permission to use my name." The conversation devolved from there with threats and recriminations from both sides. Finally, I'd had enough. "This discussion is over. We're moving to Portland next month. If you want to have any relationship with Amy after we move, you need to respect my boundaries and stop with the threats and manipulation." The day before our scheduled move, my parents made one last desperate attempt to stop us. They showed up at our apartment while the movers were loading our belongings into the truck. They created such a scene that one of the movers asked if he should call the police. I took my parents aside into the empty apartment for a final conversation. "This is happening," I told them firmly. "You can accept it and maintain some kind of relationship with Amy from a distance, or you can continue this behavior and lose her completely. The choice is yours." "You can't keep our granddaughter from us," my father insisted, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "I'm not keeping her from you. You kept yourselves from her every time you chose your convenience over her needs. Every time you prioritized golf over family. You made this choice, not me." My mother's eyes filled with tears, whether genuine or manipulative, I couldn't tell anymore. "Please, Felicia, we're your parents. We love you. If you love me, you'll respect my decision and give us space. I'll send you our new address once we're settled. Amy can video chat with you once a month as long as these conversations remain positive and you don't try to make her feel guilty about the move." It wasn't the emotional reconciliation they might have hoped for, but it was the best I could offer. They left without further argument, looking suddenly older and smaller than I remembered. The next morning, Amy and I got into our car, loaded with the few personal items that wouldn't fit in the moving truck, and began the long drive to Portland. As the familiar streets of Denver receded in the rearview mirror, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, sadness for what might have been anxiety about our uncertain future, but most of all, a profound sense of relief and hope. We were starting fresh. We were breaking the cycle. We were choosing ourselves. 6 months after our move to Portland, Amy and I had settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Our apartment was smaller than I had initially hoped for, but it had a tiny backyard and allowed pets, which made it perfect in Amy's eyes. Midnight, the black kitten we had adopted from the local shelter, had become the third member of our little family, bringing joy and chaos in equal measure. My new job at the tech company was everything I had hoped for, and more. The team was collaborative and supportive. The projects were challenging and interesting, and most importantly, the company truly valued work-life balance. When Amy caught the flu a month after we arrived, my manager didn't bat an eye when I needed to work from home for 3 days to care for her. Amy had adjusted to her new school with the resilience of childhood. After an initial period of shyness, she had made friends with a girl named Zoe who shared her love of art and cats. Her teacher, Mr. Bennett, recognized her artistic talent and encouraged her to join the school's art club where she thrived. But the most significant change was in me. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly exhausted and stressed. I had time to read books again, to take Amy to the park on weekends, even to occasionally meet friends for coffee. I had joined a support group for single parents where I found understanding and practical advice from others who were walking the same path. It was at this group that I met James, a single father raising a 10-year-old son after his wife had left them 3 years earlier. We bonded over the unique challenges of solo parenting and gradually developed a friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. He was the first person I felt comfortable enough with to share the full story of my parents and our move to Portland. "You did the right thing," he told me after listening without judgment. Some people just can't give what they don't have. His simple validation meant more than he could know. My parents, true to form, had cycled through various reactions to our move. The first month was filled with angry voicemails and text messages accusing me of cruelty and ingratitude. When that didn't work, they switched to guilt, sending tearful messages about how much they missed Amy and how their health was suffering from the stress of our absence. After 3 months, when neither anger nor guilt produced the desired result, they began calling daily, sometimes multiple times, crying and begging to speak to Amy. I maintained the boundary I had set, 1 video call per month, which I monitored to ensure they didn't try to manipulate her. During these calls, Amy was polite but reserved. She would tell them about school and her cat, answer their questions about her activities. But there was none of the natural warmth and excitement of a child talking to beloved grandparents. It was as if she sensed, with that intuitive wisdom children often possess, that these people had hurt her mother deeply. After each call, I would feel a complex swirl of emotions: relief that it was over, sadness for what might have been guilt, that Amy didn't have the loving grandparents she deserved, and anger that my parents couldn't see beyond their own needs even now. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Harper, to help me process these feelings and strengthen my resolve to maintain healthy boundaries. In our sessions, I explored the patterns of my childhood, the ways my parents' emotional neglect had shaped my own tendencies toward people-pleasing and self-sacrifice, and the fear that I might somehow pass these patterns on to Amy. Breaking generational patterns is hard work, Dr. Harper told me during one particularly difficult session. But you're already doing it. Every time you put Amy's needs first, every time you model self-respect by refusing to accept mistreatment, you're teaching her something valuable. Those words became a mantra for me on difficult days. One evening, Amy came to me with a question that broke my heart. "Mommy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love us like Zoe's grandparents love her?" I sat her down on the couch, midnight purring between us, and thought carefully about how to answer. "Some people find it very hard to love others more than they love themselves," I explained gently. "It's not that they don't love us at all, but they love in a way that's about what makes them feel good, not what others need." "Is that why we moved away from them?" "Partly, yes. I wanted us to be around people who know how to love in a healthy way, people who support us and respect our feelings." She nodded thoughtfully. "Like Mr. Bennett and Zoe and her mom?" "Exactly like them. And the people at my work, and our neighbors, and the friends we're making here." "I think that's good," she declared with the simple certainty of childhood. "I like it better when you're not sad all the time, like you were in Denver." Out of the mouths of babes indeed. A week after that conversation, I received a letter from my parents. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter addressed to both Amy and me. With some trepidation, I opened it after Amy had gone to bed. "Dear Felicia and Amy," it began. "We've been doing a lot of thinking these past months. It's not easy to look at yourself and admit you've been wrong, especially at our age. But the emptiness of our lives without you has forced us to confront some hard truths." The letter continued, acknowledging for the first time that they had indeed prioritized their own convenience over our needs. They expressed regret for the way they had handled the situation with Amy's illness and my promotion opportunity. They even admitted to opening the credit accounts in my name, offering to pay off the remaining balances and close the accounts. "We don't expect forgiveness right away," the letter concluded. "We know we've hurt you deeply and repeatedly. But we're hoping you might give us a chance to try again to be the parents and grandparents you both deserve. We're willing to follow whatever boundaries you set. We just miss you both so much." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Part of me wanted to believe them, to hope that they had genuinely changed. Another part, the protective part that had finally learned to put myself and Amy first, remained skeptical. The letter hit all the right notes, but their actions had spoken louder than words for so many years. I shared the letter with Dr. Harper at our next session. "What do you want to do?" she asked after reading it. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe them. Part of me is afraid to." "That's understandable, given your history. Remember, forgiveness doesn't have to mean forgetting or removing all boundaries. It can mean moving forward with clear eyes and realistic expectations." After much consideration, I decided to give them a cautious opportunity to demonstrate change. I wrote back acknowledging their apology and expressing appreciation for their reflection. I outlined clear conditions they would need to respect our boundaries consistently for at least 6 months before we would consider any changes to our current arrangement. They would need to close the fraudulent accounts and provide proof of payment. And they would need to speak to Amy with genuine interest in her life, not just complaints about how much they missed her. To my surprise, they agreed to everything without argument. The next video call with Amy was noticeably different. Instead of the usual guilt trips and complaints about their health, they asked Amy questions about her art projects and really listened to her answers. They even asked to see midnight cooing appropriately when Amy proudly displayed her kitten. It was a small step, but perhaps a significant one. As for me, I was learning that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was an act of self-love. That teaching Amy to value herself wasn't just good parenting. It was healing the wounded child I had once been. That sometimes the family we choose can be more nurturing than the family we're born into. I don't know if my relationship with my parents will ever fully heal. Some wounds run too deep for perfect recovery. But I do know that Amy and I are building a life filled with love, respect, and joy. We're breaking old patterns and creating new ones. We're writing our own story one day at a time. I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't just about saying no to others, it's about saying yes to your own worth. It's about recognizing when a relationship is toxic and having the courage to walk away, even when cultural expectations and family ties pull you to stay. It's about teaching your children through example that love should never come at the cost of their dignity or well-being. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't respect your needs? How did you handle that difficult situation? Leave a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is put yourself first. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to create the boundaries you need in your own life.